Let us know when we're live.
We're live.
Okay, good morning, and thank you to all in attendance today. I'd like to call to order the February 28th, 2022 meeting of the County of Perth Land Division Committee. I would like to make note that what will be shown on the screen for those viewing at home is our remote meeting platform, whereby whoever is speaking will be shown predominantly with smaller images of members and staff attending along the edge of the screen. The agenda for this meeting hearing has been posted online at perthcounty.ca. If you want to follow along, please feel free to access it now. I will remind committee members, staff, and others participating in the meeting to please mute your microphones when not in use to reduce the feedback. As this meeting is being held remotely, there are some procedural changes regarding how the committee will vote. The Secretary-Treasurer will call each of the members' names, and each member will respond if they are in favor or opposed to the motion. And the chair will announce the results of the vote. Before we proceed, I will confirm attendance with the committee members by a roll call. So, Michelle?
Thank you. Warden Aitchison.
Present.
Councillor Hurlick.
Here.
Councillor Duncan.
Here.
Deputy Warden Agats.
Here.
And Councillor McKenzie.
Present. So it looks like everybody's here. So we're good. I guess the first item then that we have is confirmation of the agenda as it was circulated out previously. Do we have a motion to confirm the agenda? Moved by Warden Aitchison and seconded by Deputy Warden Agats, excuse me. Any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Oh, sorry, Michelle, you can do the vote.
Warden Aitchison.
Yes.
Councillor Hurlick.
Yes.
Councillor Duncan.
Yes.
Deputy Warden Agats.
Yes.
And Councillor McKenzie.
Yes, so that motion is carried. Does anybody have a conflict of interest with anything on the agenda this morning? Okay, I don't see any hands going up, and if you do, as we get on through the meeting, you can declare it at that time. So the first item really part of our meeting then is the adoption of the previous minutes from January the 31st. Do we have a mover and seconder to approve those minutes? Councillor Duncan, and a seconder, please. Councillor Hurlick. Any discussion or questions with regards to those minutes? Okay, seeing none, Michelle, again, you can take the vote.
Warden Aitchison.
Yes.
Councillor Hurlick.
Yes.
Councillor Duncan.
Yes.
Deputy Warden Agats.
Yes.
And Councillor McKenzie.
Yes, so that motion is also carried. All right, the first item up then is an application for consent to sever by numbered our number or file number B37/21 by Cobblestone Diversions, care of Cameron Gerber. So, Sean, are you taking the lead on this one, or?
Hello, good morning. Yes, I will be presenting this application. So application number B3721 by Cobblestone Diversions Incorporated is seeking a consent to sever a property containing an existing semi-detached dwelling that is approximately over 100 years old. The owner of the property has applied to sever the property into two individual lots, each containing one dwelling unit of the existing semi-detached dwelling. The severed portion, which is the easterly side of the semi-detached dwelling, is proposed to be 478 square meters or 0.11 acres. And the retained portion, that is the westerly side of the semi-detached dwelling, is proposed to be 604 square meters in area or 0.25 acres. The subject property fronts onto Alma Street East and is an interior residential lot that is currently inhabited. The property is designated residential in the Listowel Ward official plan and is zoned the residential 4 zone in the North Perth zoning bylaw. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just gonna share my screen here. Just give me a second. Share,
Okay, it's good.
you can see that. Okay, so
Yep.
the common wall that divides the two dwelling units is not in the same location on the second story as it is on the ground floor. And as such, the dwelling unit on the west side cantilevers over a portion of the lower level of the east dwelling unit. So if you can see here on the image, you can see how this blue line kind of shows where the dwellings are separated, and that's where the party wall would be. The second floor has an exterior door and balcony, which is located in the center of the building. That is actually part of the westerly unit only. So this portion goes to this unit here on the west side. As a result of this design, the proposal to sever the 2 units introduces an encroachment over the lot line as it would be at the ground level. The applicant is proposing to register a strata plan to define the boundary between the 2 units. I'm just going to change this for 1 second here. Here's the strata plan. So a strata plan is a type of survey that defines the legal boundaries between, boundaries of a property using both vertical and horizontal markers. When this type of survey is employed, it is most often used to divide property into distinct units for individual ownership, with the land underneath or some other portion of the lot being of common ownership. It is similar to a plan of condominium, but distinctly different in legislation. Sorry, I'm just going to stop sharing this for a second. Although it is clear that a strata plan can be registered in Ontario, it is not fully understood how it would be used to effectively mark the severance of a semi-detached dwelling and sufficiently recognize the lot line severing land at the ground level, nor does it address the encroachment of the proposed westerly lot over the proposed easterly lot. For these reasons, the application cannot be supported as staff feels this does not conform to the County of Perth official plan and does not represent good planning. The staff report discusses the proposal in more detail. However, section 16.3 of the County of Perth official plan states that an application for consent must be in conformity with the provisions of the local municipalities implementing zoning bylaw if it is to be approved. The proposed severance complies with the majority of section 16.3, but does not conform to subsection 16.3.2.15, which is the requirement for the severance to be in conformity with the zoning bylaw. As I noted, the encroachment of the westerly unit second floor over the proposed new lot line, projecting above the easterly unit, does not comply with or maintain the intent of the North Perth zoning bylaw. The North Perth zoning bylaw permits a 0-meter lot line setback between the 2 units of a semi-detached dwelling, which means the walls of each unit may connect on the lot line. In this case, the projection of the second floor unit over the proposed lot line would not conform to this requirement. Creation of a new lot line that results in a building projection raises complications with respect to the issuance of future building permits and potential legalities such as trespassing and access. Considering the age of the building, adherence to this requirement is a fundamental requirement of the official plan with respect to reducing or eliminating such potential issues. As such, it is our recommendation that the County of Perth Land Division Committee deny the application for consent to sever. This application for consent to sever was presented to North Perth Council at the North Perth Council on February 7th, 2022. North Perth Council elected to support the staff recommendation and recommends Land Division Committee to deny the application. At the time of writing this report, 3 pieces of correspondence have been received from the public or adjacent landowners in response to the public circulation. 1 phone call was in support of the application and 2 were actually in opposition. And these were attached to the staff report. But as such, it is staff's recommendation that Land Division Committee deny the application. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Okay, I guess at this stage of the game, and I'm looking at Michelle, is there anybody coming online that wishes to speak in favor or in opposition?
Yes, we have Cameron Gerber and Jeff Boisman. Would you like me to let them in?
Yeah, well, they might as well come in now and say what they wish to say. Okay, good morning.
Morning.
And not going in any particular order here, but Jeff, you're fully on my screen here. So would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Chair and committee members. My name is Jeff Buseman. I'm an Ontario land surveyor with Van Harten Surveying, and I also do many planning applications. And I'm representing Cameron Gerber, the property owner. The application has been explained, the basics of splitting an existing semi-detached dwelling. Just to give you a little bit of background, Cameron did talk to staff initially about it, and they about this possibility, and the consideration was made for part law control. One of the requirements would be that services would have to be installed, and Cameron installed the services of water and sanitary to the 1 unit. Then in preparation for the part law control, we prepared that strata reference plan to define the property limits. And then a decision directive was made by planning staff to say, no, it should be done by consent. So that is why we're here. I think I'd like to correct, I think, a misunderstanding as to what the definition of the strata reference plan is and what Sean has identified as an encroachment. The second lever does cantilever over. The second floor cantilevers over the first floor. So the purpose of the strata reference plan is to define a property line so that there would be a 0 side limit for the first floor and the second floor. Fundamentally, is that nice image shown, presented on that blue line on that on that photo, that it goes along the party wall of the first floor, hits the ceiling of the first floor, crosses within the joists, and then goes up the floor on the second floor and then straight up to infinity. The ownership rights are very clear and very straightforward in that the ownership rights, one property would be part 1 on that plan and the other one would be part 2. Strata reference plans are a little complex to understand, and fortunately, as surveyor, I've had some experience with them. It is a 3-dimensional thing to be fully aware of and understand. Yes, we use them for condominium developments. I use them for a significant development in Guelph, where the arena, where the Guelph Storm play, the first floor and second floor are different, and similar idea. They go up a wall, through the floor, and then up another wall. It's a pretty, it's not that common, strata reference plans. It's always a little new to people, but it is definitely a clear way to define the property lines. So pretty strongly, our opinion is that this is not an encroachment. It's representing the property line as the wall at the second floor and first floor. So the idea that there's an encroachment or a negative overlap is, in our opinion, not correct. So we feel that it's conformance with zoning. I mean, if we think about the big picture here, we've got an existing semi-detached dwelling that if we can split in half, it allows for 2 more affordable units. It's functioned this way for over 100 years. The functioning is going to remain exactly the same. By having this strata reference plan allows us to protect that idea, that door that's in the front, and that one owner gets to use that little room that's behind the door, and also the porch in the front. I'd like to address a little bit the comments made by those that have written in. The previous owners talk about suggesting that this house might be torn down and development could be done differently, and this could hinder development. I guess I would disagree. In this case, we have the possibility of 2 affordable units, and the idea of maybe tearing down a house has no planning premise for this kind of decision. The other comment I'd like to make is that this is as with all semi-detached, you're always going to have the thing, the 2 neighbors are going to have to get along with, when do we replace the roof, the shingles, how is that going to be done? I mean, the reality is we got thousands, if not tens of thousands of semi-detached dwellings in Ontario that do with that same issue. I lived in one, and there's no problem with dealing with that issue. So the idea of maintenance among semi-detached units works just fine, especially, you know, in this case, we've got a very clear definition of where the property line is. I also feel for the tenant that's in the existing building right now. She's been in there since 2016. And because we all know the craziness of market value of rents and property values, the market value of rents have gone up significantly. She's probably got half the market rent that's out there right now is her rent. And so Cameron is working with her, like whether this gets approved or not, these units will be sold. A future owner has the right to take over the unit if they want to live in there. Whether this is approved or not, this will probably happen, but Cameron has got taking some action to facilitate and help her to adjust and to find a new place at a reasonable rent. I think, you know, another option would be to put in a new wall right down the middle. And then you'd have a straight line all the way up, and that whole idea of 3D and a jog property line at the different floors would not be so confusing. But we feel that's not quite appropriate for this place. You would lose that front door at the front, and you'd lose that front balcony. So we feel like the proposal that we have is the better way to do it. It'll just protect that historic look of that building. It's a very nice building. I also like to highlight that when Town of North Perth supported Sean's planning report, I attended the meeting, did not have an opportunity to speak or to address the council to kind of identify what I thought was a misunderstanding of an encroachment. And so I'm going to say that they went on the same report as Sean did. I have a lot of respect for Sean, but I just feel like this idea that calling it encroachment is not appropriate, because if the property line is the wall at the second floor, there is no encroachment. Pretty simple. I think the biggest thing, what I'd like to see, is it's maybe a little more of a social issue, is that we're going to end up with 2 more affordable units here rather than just one, and then require a rental situation or 2 rentals, or an owner comes in, lives in one half and rents out the other half. We're going to have 2 affordable units here. We all know how hard it is to find affordable units in any municipality in Ontario right now. But most importantly, it's an application that's respecting the current use of the semi as it is. And really, there's really not any fundamental change. And the creation of these new lots will not detriment at all the future development potential or how this place is handled, whether this had a jog in the wall, as we see, or whether it was a straight line. The ramifications are identical. I hope I've explained myself well. I'd be happy to entertain questions, or Cameron, if you need to add to it, I'll let the chair direct that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Yes, Mr. Gerber, do you have anything to add further at this time?
No, I don't believe so. Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, is there anybody, Michelle, that wishes to speak in opposition to this application?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, questions from the committee then. Daryl?
Yeah, no, good, thanks. So, Sally, we'll just get into this again here. The encroachment is the concern for sure, right? That is the big underlying issue. Am I correct saying that? The offshoot.
I think I've heard you clearly that you're asking if the encroachment is the issue. Is that right?
Yes, and I
Okay.
understand that's where we're focused. This is uncommon. We don't see that often, never that I recall. But this is the big concern, correct?
It is not something that we see very often, that's for sure. And, you know, our limited exposure to this type of survey, I would definitely say, you know, Jeff's the expert in the room at this moment on how these work. I think the question to ask ourselves, I guess, is the strata plan, the result of that, a property boundary being defined in 3 dimensions, and the way that unfolds, if it's technically sound. I mean, right now we're sort of at odds on that, but Jeff has the most experience on it. So whether technically there's a zoning infraction, I think is still, again, we're sort of taking Jeff's word that that's not the case. And we've talked, or I heard a lot of talk about affordability, but no details on that. So I'm not sure that that's something that can carry a lot of weight in this particular conversation. I mean, we have 2 units here. They're 2 units today. They're going to be 2 units in the future. They're currently, one may be lived in by the owner, and the other one rented out. They may both be rented out by future owners. They may both be lived in by future owners. So when we talk about affordability, we need to know like price points and local conditions. And so we haven't heard that. So I'm just not giving a lot onto that at the moment. So this is a tricky one. Is this in the future? And Jeff, I'd like you to help us understand this a little better. If the building was changed in the future or proposed to be changed in the future, and they needed to sort of undo that 3 dimension, is it then another consent or exemption from part lot control to then undo it and bring the line back over for a future? And then at that point, the owner would have to own both sides to just, you know, or have agreement from their neighbor to make that change.
Shall I
Go
answer
ahead,
that,
Jeff.
Chair? Okay,
Yeah.
that's a good question, Sally. I've wondered that one too. When we register, probably, you know, we've probably registered hundreds of condos, and then when I look at the condos done in the 1970s and how they were split and awkwardness and, you know, along stairwells and stuff, and I think, and when we register a condo with a strata type plan, but also with the original architect drawings to show how the thing was built. But I think if a condo, 1970s condo, ever went up in fire and had to rebuild it, logic tells me they would never rebuild it the same, like in terms of efficiency, practicalness, and so on. I'd hate to see how that's ever going to happen in Ontario. I haven't heard of a story in Ontario where the condos had a significant challenge on, hey, the place burnt down, we got to rebuild it, we got to rebuild it exactly the way it was. That will be a challenge for any strata situation that we have. If the building was built in the last 5 years, that's a piece of cake, I would think, because you got fresh drawings, there's a fresh architectural style, and so on. But if the building's quite old, that's going to be a challenge. Not saying that. So for this one, what will happen? I think someone could design a wall just like what we have today. That wouldn't be that hard at all. Or you divide it right in the middle. And yes, you'd probably have to go through part law control or a consent to make the line straight all the way up instead of having the jog. I do appreciate your comment, Sally, that you're right. It's not necessarily an affordable discussion, and maybe I shouldn't have brought it up. I think the discussion is more of, is this a good way of dividing the parcel? And I agree with you that we don't see them very often in, residential environments. But I've seen a number of homes where the third floor of a semi is across the two. And I've also wondered, now, okay, if they split it, how are they going to do that? I think that's pretty interesting. One unit's going to get the whole big room on the third floor. The other one isn't. And the strata plan, yeah, it's the way to define it. It's very simple. Really, I would not even, I didn't even, when I put this application together, and like I said, I do many, I didn't envision this would be a problem because I guess my experience and confidence with strata reference plans is so clear. The property line is the wall at the second floor and the wall at the first floor. Fairly simple.
And in the strata plan, like in a condominium, it seems more straightforward because there's common elements. But what we're talking about here is dividing the property into two and with zero common elements.
You're right.
In the examples that you've done in the past, do they have common elements or no? Like the Guelph example, for instance, is there any common element there?
No.
Okay.
No. So some buildings I've done projects in Mississauga and area and so on where the three-dimensional type project happens more often. And they're confusing. They're hard to understand. But at the end of the day, when surveyor prepares it, I've looked at other surveyors' plans. I understand them and I understand how they're done. And it's a constant, we strive hard to try to make the picture as clear as possible so that it is clear. Another project we've done is Village by the Arboretum in Guelph. It also has that strata concept. You'll see it more, especially buildings with underground parking, that the parking is underneath the whole place, but then up above, there might be two towers. And one tower is one building, one tower is another building, and the underground parking is somewhat shared. So that's just another example where it happens. Those are much more complex than this, I'm going to say, pretty simple semi-detached dwelling where it's just one jog in the wall.
Mm-hmm. I think for the committee's sake, this is a question of whether or not this type of consent is something that is supportable in here in this context. This is not a condominium. There's no common element. This is a severance. So these are going to forever be two separate properties with a third dimension to the reference plan until such time that someone does a consent to straighten the line again. If future buildings require that.
Okay, thanks, Sally. Councillor Duncan had a question, I believe.
Thanks, Councillor McKenzie. It seems to be this whole thing centers around a completely technical aspect. Definitely one I've never seen in 12 years of land division committee now, or 4 years of land division committee, sorry. What I'm wondering is this a situation where we need to defer this application to let planning staff and the applicant have more discussion to see if an amicable solution can be?
Would you like me to address that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll direct that to you, Sally. Thanks.
listening to Jeff and reading into strata plans a little bit and knowing that he has successfully registered them in other places, I think technically this is this is something that can be done. Whether or not it results in a zoning infraction then is something that I could explore more. But I think it's always going to be a confusion point for future practitioners on this property. Because it's uncommon, because it's a little bit gray perhaps. But again, I just want to reiterate, I think that the question really is whether this is the type of consent like that you want to support. So there are technical reasons, and then there are, community vision reasons that we support or don't support certain types of consents. And so this is a hard one, and I don't envy your position, but I think what Jeff offers that is technically possible.
Okay, thanks, Sally. Any other questions from members of the committee? Councillor Hurlick again?
Yeah, good, thanks. No, one last thing. We talked on utilities, or you didn't, rather, Jeff. We talked on utilities. Where is that at for sure? And, are they separate? Can they be made separate? And where does the building code fall in something like this all of a sudden, I know on the new semi, of course, there's fire breaks and that kind of work. They have to do mass renovation here to get good, clean utilities in each section. They get into this, could they run into issues around structural and not able to come through is what I have concerned. And would we be on the hook? I don't know.
Okay, Daryl, I'm not sure who you want to direct that question to. You were breaking up fairly badly here, but who would you like to direct that question to?
Well, Sally, I'll direct that to you. How separate are these utilities?
Actually, Sean has the details. There's now 2 services into the property.
Yeah, so sorry.
The building code, I think comes down to firewall, and Sean probably has the details on that as well.
Yeah, so
maybe Cameron.
When this application was submitted, the dwelling had one set of services, and it was noted that if they were to be split, each side would have to have individual services. I believe the applicant had spoken to Public Works Department, and it was discussed, and the Public Works Department had no concerns with adding another set of services to the other unit. I'm not sure if that's taken place yet, because I believe that was supposed to happen in the spring. But Cameron he would know if it has happened now, but I think he's nodding his head. So that was one of the first things that needed to happen. With regard to the building code, basically the party wall would need to be fire rated to a certain standard. And it has not been verified. However, since it is an existing semi-detached dwelling with residents on each side, that should be the case already. But it has not. We have not had a building inspector go in and look at that.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Sally, go ahead.
Just on that point, I wanted to confirm, and I can scroll here through, but Sean can probably answer it for you right now. If you decide to support the severance, is the firewall confirmation a condition?
Sorry, are you asking me if that was included as a condition?
Yeah, I was just going to scroll down, but you maybe just know off the top of your head.
I don't believe it was. I think at one time we were discussing having an inspection of the place, but I don't know if that ever ended up getting put into the conditions. I'm sorry, I could look here.
Yeah, I don't think it is in here.
Yeah, I think we had drafted some pretty standard conditions with some site specific to this, but these were drafted in the sense that if land division committee supports it, there's at least some conditions to work from.
There is a
If
condition
land-
here about confirming the separate servicing.
Jeff, you wanted to make a comment?
Don't believe, I did read the 8 conditions. I don't believe there was a condition about confirming firewall. There was not. Sean is shaking his head. There wasn't. Also, I did want to say that the one condition, I think it's condition 8. I'm just looking at my list. Yeah, here's my list. Condition 8, we would say it should be removed because it says confirmation that from the township that the zoning bylaw that is in conformance with them. Now, I guess that's a matter of interpretation. In my interpretation is that it does conform because the property line is along the party wall. My thought of the offer to defer and have more discussions with staff, I'm happy to do that. I'd rather work with them, get them, to understand this more and to, be on the same page with this. I'd prefer, if staff want to do that, I'm happy to do the deferral. I think that would, in a way, there's some merit to that. And I do respect Sally's comment to say this is very unique. You will probably never see another one like it. In Guelph, I've been doing this for 20 years. I have split, I think, 3 semi-detached dwellings in my career, and all old ones, all ones that they felt merit in splitting it. There was never an issue. We didn't have a jog in those buildings, so even the volume of existing semi-detached to be split is going to be very rare, very rare. The whole idea of a strata plan, yeah, it's very rare. But just because it's so rare doesn't mean it and it's maybe feels foreign, doesn't mean it has to be denied for that reason. I think if there's a truly something wrong with it, I'm all ears, but I just don't see anything wrong with it. So anyway, some additional comments.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Additional questions, Deputy Warden Agats.
I guess not maybe a question, more of an observation. I kind of agree with Matt. I'd like to see this deferred so that they can have discussions. I'm a little puzzled. I think Jeff said that he didn't get a chance to speak at North Perth. Was there not a public meeting over this to speak?
This is the public meeting.
Right. Sorry. Right. Sorry. I'm going back to the old way where we used to be. Right. So again, I guess my other concern is like North Perth had some discussion. They've denied it. What will happen if they decide that they don't want to pass the bylaw? Like it will be done, or how can we explain to North Perth? I guess maybe the first way is for you to go back and have more discussion and then come back with it. And if you feel that it should go ahead, I guess we need to figure out a way to discuss with North Perth what should happen. Or how they should
Sally?
look at this.
Yeah, with respect to your question about zoning and building on what Jeff said, the 8th condition in here is that confirmation be received from North Perth that an amendment to the zoning bylaw has been approved to recognize, and then it's specific about the encroachment. The opportunity exists to make that condition that confirmation be received from North Perth that the property is either compliant with zoning or an amendment has been passed to recognize deficiencies. And we've used that condition on other severances in the past. And then we've also seen where, a municipality didn't agree with the severance generally and used zoning as a means of appeal. So that's possible. And I guess that's one way to go. Another way to go is to further investigate zoning. And I think that's going to be hard. There was probably not a lot of examples out there for us to pull from. But we could sort of really dial into the details here and make an assessment or an opinion on whether or not there is a zoning infraction and how exactly to address that. And that would unfold during this, meeting of this condition. Or we could do that now, have that conversation with North Perth as well, and then come back. So there's two options here for the committee. It's, do you want us to sort out some of this nitty gritty? Or do you agree with the consent in principle, and then we can work through it during the conditions?
Okay, thanks again, Sally. Any further questions from any member of the committee? Warden Aitchison?
Not really a question, more of a comment, I guess. I'd have to agree with both Matt and Rhonda and Sally that maybe we should sort through the nitty gritty. I'd be surprised if North Perth would pass that zoning bylaw amendment as it stands here right now. So maybe we should find out what the possibility of that is, because we could approve this now and it still go nowhere. So let's maybe find out some of the further nitty gritty details, and then we can deal with it at a later date. To be honest with you, because I think we're just going to drag this out, and you're going to end up in appeal in all likelihood. I don't know. I could be wrong, but like I see the merits of both sides of doing this, not and in favor of. They both make compelling. Like staff makes a compelling argument, as does Jeff make a compelling argument. So I guess I'd like to little more fine details on this strat plan and the nitty gritty.
Okay. Councilor Duncan has an additional comment.
So I'd be willing to make a motion. We defer the application to let the applicant and planning staff have further discussions to sort out the nitty gritty, as we call it.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Did you get that, Michelle? Okay, thank you. We do need a seconder for that motion that Matt just made, and Deputy Warden Agats is going to second that. Any further discussion on that motion at this time? Okay, Michelle, I'll let you do the vote then, if you wish.
Warden Aitchison,
Yes.
Councillor Hurlick,
Yes.
Councillor Duncan,
Yes.
Deputy Warden Agats,
Yes.
and Councillor McKenzie.
Yes. So the results of that is that this motion has been deferred for a further or sometime down the road here when it comes back with some of these questions answered. So I do thank Jeff and Cameron for being available here today. And as has been stated a couple times, it's not something that we normally would see at land division. So appreciate the input that you've given us, and certainly the input that Sally has provided us with as well. So the results of that then we'll leave it with staff, and it'll come back at a future meeting with some clarification and some direction as to what we should do. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair and committee members, and Sally and Sean. Appreciate listening and the feedback. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So moving on, it brings us down to the consent file status report. And Michelle, I believe you're going to do that for us.
Absolutely. I'll just give a couple highlights from the report. Hopefully you've all had a chance to review it. Excuse me. So since our last meeting until February 18th, when we created the report, we've received 5 new applications, most of which have already been deemed complete, and notices are either going out this week or have gone out. As you can see, we have several applications that are in process where notices have been posted and planners are working on their reports. There were 4 files approved through delegated authority and 4 that received final approvals as well. Currently, there are 2 files on hold, which the planner assigned to the applications are working with the agents on additional studies needed. Does anybody have any questions?
Oh, don't see anybody's hand going up, Michelle. So, oh, Jim's got a question. Go ahead,
Quick
Jim.
question. I was looking at the ones on hold,
Mm-hmm.
and one was M&H Farms from Perth South, and it said it required an OPA.
Yes.
I was kind of wondering if it was just a severance application, what is all involved and it needs an OPA.
Let me just pull up and see if I have some notes. That one is Adam's file, and I know that they were working with, sorry, I just want to see what notes I have here. MNH requires OPA plus study. So I believe that the Trevor from MTE is the agent for that one. So Adam's been talking with Trevor. It will require, I'm not sure why, but it will require an OPA as well and some additional studies. And they're also working with Perth South on what's required. So I'm not sure what the details are exactly, but Adam's working with them.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay. Any other questions on the consent file status report? Okay, if not, we do have a recommendation here. And the recommendation is that Perth County Council receives the consent file status report. We have a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Warden Aitchison, seconded by Councillor Duncan. Any further discussion on that? Okay, Michelle, I'll let you to conduct the vote.
Warden Aitchison,
Yes.
Councillor Hurlick,
Yes.
Councillor Duncan,
Yes.
Deputy Warden Agats,
Yes.
and Councillor McKenzie.
Yes, so that is carried as well. I don't believe we have any correspondence at this time that I'm aware of. And there's nothing in the appeals item again at this time. Any other business that anybody wants to bring up at this time? Okay, we do not have a closed session, I don't believe, this morning. So the next item then is our next meeting will be March the 28th, again at 9:30 in the morning, I assume. And then the only thing that's left for this meeting then is a motion to adjourn. And I would take that at this time. If you want to leave, Councillor Duncan and Deputy Warden Agats. And Michelle, you can conduct the vote.
So, Warden Aitchison,
Yes.
Councillor Hurlick,
Yes.
Councillor Duncan,
Yes.
Deputy Warden Agats,
Yes.
and Councillor McKenzie.
Yes, so we are officially adjourned, and we will see you in a month's time, I guess. So very interesting discussion this morning. Something just a little unusual to what we would normally have, but certainly a good discussion on it, and look forward to coming back with a bit of additional information for us. So very good. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Everybody's finding the blurring option for their cameras. Matt's blurred, Walter's blurred. Everybody's finding